Do animals know when a human is trying to help them?
Every wild animal carries a threat assessment running constantly in the background. Speed of approach, duration, eye contact. The calculation happens faster than thought, and the output is almost always the same. Get away from the human. This is not instilled through learning. It runs in species that have never encountered a human before. Tested in controlled conditions, confirmed across dozens of wildlife studies. The threat response to humans appears to be encoded at a level deeper than individual experience. It is inherited. When we rescue a trapped animal, cutting the net, pulling it from the mud, freeing it from the snare, we tend to assume the animal understands what's happening. The research
Well, they're not going to understand what's happening in the sense that a human understands it, but they're still going to have a rough idea that they've gone from being stuck and nervous and scared to then unstuck, being able to freely move their body, and they're free now. I don't know, like they'll the causation of that happening is because a human came to them and helped them, like in an animal sense. They don't understand. They themselves don't understand what the word help means, but they've been assisted.
suggests otherwise. Something else is going on, and scientists who have spent careers studying it are still working out what to call it. Start with what being trapped does to the body. The moment a wild animal loses the ability to move, its physiology enters a state with no real human equivalent. Cortisol
I don't. It's I. Let's let him talk himself
saturates the
out.
bloodstream. Adrenaline climbs to levels that would be lethal if sustained for more than a few minutes. Heart rate doubles, then doubles
So
again.
it's just a a flight or fight reaction. I'm pretty sure humans have felt this type of stress or engagement before.
A study in the European Journal of Wildlife Research found that ungulates caught in fencing show higher cortisol concentrations than animals injured by gunshot or struck by vehicles.
Which makes sense if you think about it. Because, for example, in human terms, a human is much more likely to be calm if they get hit by a car or if they've already been shot by a bullet. They're going to be, yes, at a high heart, like a high level of. They're going to be at a high level of. They're going to be at a high level of caution. However, the approaching danger has already approached, and now they have to deal with the what's going to happen next fear, rather than someone being chased with someone being chased by someone with a gun and being cornered. Now there's the thought of what is going to happen, and the human brain is an amazing tool. However, it loves to exaggerate how bad something can become. So then you're naturally going to be more scared at what's going to happen rather than what's already happened. Because now, if it's already happened, you can start to deal with it. If it hasn't happened yet, you can only think about how bad it's going to be. Same with animal. And animals' main defense feature when it comes with danger is to run away and try and escape. So when it's then put in a state where it's stuck and it can't move, and all these noises and sounds and smells are being put into the oxygen by other predators or animals or humans, and again, you have to remember animals have a much higher smelling capability, seeing capability, and sensing capability than humans. They're going to go into a state of shock because obviously they can't, run away from the danger. Uh, So now, if that's what he's trying to explain on how we can't relate as humans because animals have a higher sensing, smelling, and seeing ability than us, then sure, I'll give it to him.
Higher than being shot. The body is burning through every reserve it has, running every emergency system at once, doing what animals have done in moments like this for longer than the species has existed, waiting to die or fighting until it can't. From the outside, this state has a specific look. Pupils fully dilated, muscles rigid, not tense the way a nervous animal is tense, but locked, the way a body locks when it has committed everything to a single outcome. The mouth may
Flight
open
or
slightly,
fright.
breathing becomes shallow and very fast. Wildlife rehabilitators describe it as the animal going somewhere else, still present in the body, but no longer attending to anything that isn't the immediate threat. So when a human walks toward a trapped animal, the animal doesn't read rescuer. It reads the arrival of an apex predator at the worst possible moment. This is why
Debatable.
the thrashing gets worse the closer you get. The animal's threat system interprets proximity as the final phase of a hunt. It spends its last energy on the only response its history has ever given it. And then, in some of these encounters, something shifts. The animal goes still. Not from exhaustion, something more deliberate than that. The shift is visible when it happens. Field researchers and wildlife rehabilitators who have seen it describe a specific transition. The rigid locked body softens fractionally. The frantic motion stops.
It's realistically, it's probably accepting its fate, man. Like, think about it. If you were an animal in America and you got stuck and you just see like a 5'3" fat man. You're like, well, yeah, no, this is the end. He looks like he's hungry, and to me, I'm a small light snack. I'm going to accept that, and I can't blame you for that because if I was a kid and I got stuck and I saw a fat American coming up with me, I'm pretty sure I think I'm gonna be eaten. And at the end of the day, yeah, no, I'll leave it right there actually.
and the animal orients, not away from the human, toward them. It holds that position and watches. In December 2005, a crab fisherman found a female humpback whale tangled in rope lines
Ooh.
18 miles off San Francisco. The ropes were wrapped around her mouth, her pectoral fins, her tail. 12 crab traps, 9
You see, that is just that makes me so sad to think about because you have to remember that, like I said earlier, animals don't understand in the sense that humans understand. Sure, I can have the basis there. So if their senses, movement, seeing, and feeling are then locked out, and then so like imagine you're an animal and your whole thing is swimming, and every now and again you have to come up for the ocean to breathe, and now you've been all these, and you don't know what a rope is. All you know is that your ability to swim up and down, back and forth, has been subjugated, and all you can do now is sink. And this thing is dragging onto your skin, forcing you to go down. And you realize if I don't find my way out to breathe, I'm then going to just die of drowning. And they understand that they're going to die if they don't try to get oxygen. That much they understand. So then, not being able to understand why it's happening, being unable to move around in a way a human would to then free themselves from it to stop happening, and then also having to deal with other people or other predators possibly coming to attack them. That's just that's just an unfair amount of stress on an animal that doesn't understand what's going to happen to it. And that's just makes me sad. That should make you sad as a human with empathy and understanding. That should make you sad.
90 pounds each hung off her body and pulled her downward. She was fighting constantly just to keep her blowhole above the surface. A rescue team arrived within hours. 4 divers entered the water carrying curved knives, knowing a single reflexive movement from her tail could kill any of them. She stopped moving the moment they entered the water. For over an hour, she held position at the surface while the divers worked around her body. At several points, she repositioned herself, rotating, extending a fin, adjusting her angle, in ways that gave the divers better access.
You see, you can't explain this to me without telling me that animals can understand what we're trying to do in a common sense. Like like an animal can physically feel that parts of their body are being freed due to the human's help. And you can't tell me that they don't actively understand that we are helping them. Sure, they might understand what the word help means, but they can see that our heart rate is not peaking. We don't smell of like anger or ill intent, and they can physically see that we're not trying to harm them. You know, we're not trying to chase them or anything. And you're telling me that after all of that and all that information, they don't understand us. And it comes down to like, when you think about it, it's almost like learning a language. Let's stay with me here. When you speak to someone who's not English and your main language is fluently English, they speak and they've tried to learn English and they've tried to speak to you, they don't sound as how to say, they don't sound as smart. Not saying they're dumb, but the way they articulate their words is as if a child, a toddler, or someone of young English understanding is speaking. They don't use verbs correctly, they don't use adjectives correctly, they don't sound as though they've lived long enough to understand what they're saying themselves. But that's not because they don't understand the language. That's because they've never taught the language before. So they just sound like an animal in the sense that when I'm how do I, that so they don't sound on the same IQ level as you. Now switch over languages, of course, and you try to speak their language, you're going to sound like the kid, and they're going to sound like the professional adult because they understand how the words work and the meaning of words. So if you take it into animal linguisticism, is that even a word? I just made that up on the spot. Trying to explain how an animal is feeling from turning animal thought into human understanding is always going to be screwed because there's going to be a gap of inferred knowledge and knowledge gained through the experience of living as that animal in its own lifestyle and ecosystem. And that's just something we're never going to be able to grasp, but we can only ever infer.
access to the lines they were cutting. A 50-foot, 50-ton animal chose to hold still while strangers with knives worked across her body. The explanation researchers favor has to do with threat pattern recognition. A predator closing in moves fast with aggression, closing distance in a direct line. That specific movement pattern is what a trapped animal's alarm system has been calibrated to detect across millions of years of evolution. A human trying to help moves differently, slowly, without sudden gestures, touching the trap instead of the animal, producing no sounds that match anything in the threat catalog. The brain searches its entire library of threat signatures.
And again, this makes me so. I don't know if it's because I'm not understanding how actual animal brains work, and I'm just being a dumbass. But the thought in which that, okay, so check this box off, and then I go to this one and I check this box. Like that doesn't seem like how animals or even humans work. That's like assuming. It's like when people assume how another person feels because they have themselves have seen that or are trying to check off lists like, okay, they're mad, they didn't eat breakfast today, this they're yes, while checking these boxes can help you understand the general feeling of them on a wider scale, it won't pin down how that animal specifically is responding to how you feel. It's not gonna exactly give you the response of that person because everyone's different. Everyone's on a spectrum when it comes to feeling. So someone who exhibits the exact same patterns and someone else might still respond differently, even though they've identically had the exact same experience because they have different levels of emotion. It's a spectrum. Same with animals. Multiple different animals, even of the same species, are probably going to respond differently, if not while are going to respond differently while still being the same response. They're not going to check, okay, he's not being aggressive, they're just going to slowly intake because information isn't line, read, correct. That's like a very codistic, that's like a very computer like take. Like information comes in, process comes out. Rather a bunch of information comes in, the brain's trying to process everything at once, certain signals are being sent slowly, and the brain's understanding the thing as a whole. And I feel like that's a much better way than line.
And comes back empty. With no recognized pattern to respond to, the crisis response stalls. The animal waits. In Yellowstone, a research team found a wolf in a leg hold trap. The wolf lunged and snapped at every approach, exactly what the biology predicts. One researcher stopped moving and held eye contact with the animal without looking away. Eye contact between predator and prey carries specific weight in mammal communication. Predator approaching to kill does not typically hold steady eye contact. It watches the prey's movement, tracks the body, calculates. Sustained direct eye contact that doesn't accompany aggression or movement is a signal that sits outside the standard predator threat template. Some researchers believe it may read as a form of social engagement rather than a hunt posture. The animal's alarm system, already searching for a pattern that matches a predator, encounters something it wasn't built to classify. After several minutes, the wolf stopped lunging. It sat down. It held the eye contact back. When the team began working on the trap, the wolf watched their hands. When the trap released, it stood still for a moment, looked directly at the researcher, then walked into the tree line. Field researchers describe this as suspension of threat response rather than anything more loaded. The alarm system doesn't switch off.
Well, yes, because that's a completely different agenda. An animal that's never chilled or hanged out with a human is probably not going to respond in the same way that an animal that is in contact with humans and understand humans as a whole. That's like, if I take someone from a completely different continent and I throw them into the middle of Europe, they're not going to understand a lot of the things that we do here, the mannerisms, the way we speak, the way we act, but they're going to have a rough idea. So if they need help finding a police or a restaurant or a toilet, they'll come up to you, they'll gesture in certain ways like toilet or pee, a place to pee, they'll like action it out. And you both have a mutual understanding, okay, he's trying to explain this, and then you point or you shoot up. They'll understand those things. So that's the exact same as an animal. They can physically, like he said, they can see, and in that sense that when a man who doesn't understand the UK EU mannerisms asks for help and then they're pointed into the direction, they might not say or have a conversation of how grateful he is, but there's a mutual understanding that yes, thank you for helping me. You've been that there's a mutual understanding that thank you for helping me, and I'm glad I could help you. And that could arguably be said the same as a wolf. He's seen that you've helped him, and he looks at he can't physically say anything. He can't woof. Well, thank you very much for helping me. It just acknowledges you and goes away, and that could be seen as an acknowledgement of understanding that they've been helped.
it loses its anchor point. The expected sequence of predator behavior never arrives, and the crisis response has nothing to lock onto. The harder question is what happens after the trap opens. When the last rope was cut from the humpback off the Farallon Islands, she swam in wide circles around the divers before surfacing beside each one individually.
You can't tell me animals don't understand us. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to.
Nudging them with the tip of her jaw, one by one, before moving to the next. James Mosquito, one of the divers, described it to the San Francisco Chronicle as feeling like gratitude. Scientists are careful with that word. Humpbacks do interact with divers in certain conditions, and behavior following extreme physiological stress is hard to interpret cleanly. But humpback whales have spindle neurons, the same specialized brain cells found in humans, great apes, and elephants associated with empathy and rapid social decision-making. These cells were long assumed to exist only in primates. The whale has the neurological architecture for the kind of processing that moment would require. Whether she used it that afternoon off San Francisco is something the data can't settle. Juvenile elephants pulled from mud pits in Kenya have been documented making physical contact with the people who freed them, trunk to hand, trunk to arm, before walking away. The trunk contact is significant. An elephant's trunk is its primary sensory organ. It contains more than 40,000 individual muscles and carries a density of nerve endings comparable to human fingertips. When an elephant extends its trunk to touch something deliberately, it is not a casual gesture, it is an examination. Researchers in elephant rescue contexts have noted that the animals sometimes hold the
Also, people forget that animals can just do things for the sake of doing them. Like, as humans, we do things with no real explanation behind them. But I feel like when we see animals do the exact same thing, we tend to overanalyze because we can't understand them initially. Like, I promise you, animals just be doing shit for the sake of doing shit. I promise you, it's possible.
contact for several seconds, the trunk resting against the rescuer's arm or hand before withdrawing. The touch is slow and appears deliberate in a way that distinguishes it from reactive contact. Elephants mourn their dead, recognize themselves in mirrors, and carry social memories across decades. They have been observed returning to the bones of deceased companions and touching them with their trunks, family members sometimes, that died years before. The cognitive equipment to distinguish between a human who caused harm and one who ended it is not something elephants are missing. Some researchers go further. They point out that elephants in documented rescue situations have been observed staying close to the humans who freed them for longer than any threat suspension explanation requires. The threat is gone. The animal is free. There is no biological reason to remain. And yet several documented cases show elephants standing near their rescuers for minutes after.
I'd like to take this time to just appreciate you saving me from the mud pit. I swear to God, you're not going to believe this, but I saw a banana in the mud, and I told myself I could get that. And slowly, my fat ass tried to get in. But once I realized I was stuck there, it just happened. So, this stays between me and you. You don't need to tell my lovely wife. I am a man, and if she finds out, she will divorce me.
Release.
The
Not
elephant,
fleeing,
probably.
not grazing, simply present, before eventually moving away. The honest answer to whether animals know when a human is trying to help them is that we genuinely don't know. What the data shows
So this was a nothing sandwich. This video is basically, do animals understand us? Well, we don't know.
is that certain animals, cetaceans, elephants, wolves,
Cetaceans? The hell is a cetacean? 1 second. The hell is a cetacean? What the hell is a cetacean? Cetacean are fully aquatic marine mammals. Just say whales, bro. On everything I love, just say whales.
measurably suspend their threat response when a calm human works around them without escalating. What happens post-rescue in some of these animals includes orienting towards the rescuer, making deliberate contact, and behaviors that serve no obvious survival function. What the data cannot reach is the inside of those encounters.
Not everything has to be for survival, you know.
What it is to be the wolf standing at the tree line, watching the people who freed it walk back to their vehicles. What the whale was doing when she moved from diver to diver in that cold water. Whether any of it meant something to her, or whether we find meaning in these moments because we are also animals running pattern recognition. And the pattern we keep finding is ourselves. There is a version of this question that science will eventually answer more precisely. The tools are getting better, neuroimaging in cetaceans, long-term behavioral tracking.
I feel like though it comes down to when will we reach, or if we ever do reach a point where we can physically and verbally understand what animals are saying. You know, I understand that animals don't speak in the way humans do, but they still have linguistic qualities. And are we ever going to reach the way we can understand and respond to animals in a way they understand us. That'd be interesting. I'd love to one day speak to my dog.
In elephant populations, more rigorous documentation protocols in wildlife rescue. The data will accumulate. Some of what is currently uncertain will become clearer. The researchers who study this most carefully hold the question open. The animals don't answer it.
Yep, no, so yeah, like I said, it was great. It was a great, definitely a great video to insight as to like what does happen to them when these things happen. It's not an answer, and we're probably never going to get an answer in any current day. Yeah, you never know. The next tomorrow AI might be able to decipher animal and linguistic
Fear
qualities
is more.
and we'll be able to understand them fully. But anyway, that is not exact. But yes, that was a great video. Animals, I feel like animals understand us, and with enough time and research, maybe we'll be able to understand how they can understand us as well. Thank you for watching. Peace.